Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to, well, cut through the noise and get to the heart of some truly mind-bending concepts. And these come from a listener for whom this deep dive is custom designed.
It is.
We can pretty much promise that by the end of this conversation, the very chair you are sitting on will never feel quite as solid or dependable ever again.
And that's a promise we can actually keep thanks to today's source material.
So what are we looking at?
Today, we're diving into excerpts from Session 61 of the Early Sessions Book 2 of the Seth material.
Okay.
This was recorded on Wednesday, June 10th, 1964 at 9 p.m. And these are, of course, the dictated words of the entity Seth, channeled through Jane Roberts.
Who Seth always calls Rupert.
Right, affectionately calls Rupert. And this session, Session 61, it's famous for being just packed with intense philosophical density. It crams these huge cosmological revelations into a pretty short amount of time.
So before we jump into the spontaneous creation of, well, everything around us, we have a quick but mandatory declaration to make.
We do.
We are really pleased to announce that this deep dive is being distributed completely free of charge.
Yeah, on all major platforms.
And it's for purely educational purposes. We really encourage everyone who is intrigued by these concepts, and you should be, to go study the Seth material books.
You really have to. And visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. You can find it at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Yeah, this is material that really deserves a close reading.
What's so fascinating about Session 61, though, is the setup. Seth literally starts by apologizing to Rupert, to Jane.
Apologizing for what?
For how long the previous two sessions were. He promises this one will be short.
Ah, I see a bit of cosmic irony coming.
It's just delightful because, yeah, the session might be short in, like, word count, but it immediately plunges into a complete redefinition of physical law.
Yeah.
Every single sentence is just critical.
So it's the universe's most engaging but maybe slightly misleading short story.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so our goal for you today is to unpack three core concepts from this lightning round session.
Great.
First, the shocking idea of the instantaneity and discontinuity of matter. Second, the radical idea of subconscious creation, which basically means you are the architect of your physical environment.
A heavy one.
And third, the truly bizarre existence of what Seth calls negative intervals. These are the moments when reality literally disappears, and it's replaced by something called negative matter.
Yeah. It's a deep dive that really asks a fundamental question. How real is real, and how much of what we experience is actually just a rapid-fire projection?
Okay, let's unpack this opening statement then. It's basically the foundational argument against, well, all of classical physics.
It really is.
We start with the core principle. Seth argues that matter is fundamentally spontaneous and instantaneous.
Spontaneous and instantaneous. And that right there, that goes against thousands of years of human observation.
Right. If I leave my keys on the counter, I assume they are the same keys continuously existing until I pick them up again. That's continuity.
And that assumption of continuity, according to Seth, is the grand illusion he's here to tear down.
The grand illusion.
Our whole scientific framework, it assumes that objects possess this innate permanence.
Sure.
They exist as a stable collection of particles that just persist through time, simply moving or changing position. Seth just rejects that stability entirely.
So the keys on my counter.
What you perceive as your keys continuously existing is actually a perceptual illusion. And it's an illusion created by speed.
And he doesn't mince words about it, does he? The quote is so definitive.
It is, he says. Basically, material is spontaneous and instantaneous, as I told you. The change in it that you seem to perceive is illusion.
So if my keys are vanishing and reappearing thousands of times per second, how do they feel so solid? How do they not just turn into a blurry mess?
The answer is in the mechanism. It's this idea of constant new creation.
Not change, but creation.
Exactly. The continuity is false. Matter isn't one object that's enduring over time. It is a rapid sequence of discrete, separate creations.
Like a movie. A series of still frames.
A perfect analogy. Or think of an old light bulb. Our eyes perceive continuous light, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, that bulb is powered by alternating current, and it's constantly turning on and off 50 or 60 times a second. The light itself is discontinuous, but the speed completely fools our senses.
So it's like a high-speed projector flashing thousands of identical images onto a screen. Except in this case, the projector is our subconscious mind, and the screen is physical space. The object vanishes completely.
Gone.
An entirely new identical object is instantly created in the exact same spot.
Precisely. And the key characteristics we attribute to matter, rigidity, sharpness, density, all of that depends entirely on the energy which forms it in that single instant.
Okay, so the quality of the matter is about the energy.
Yes, it's defined by the position of the energy that fills the pattern and how quickly that energy is flowing in and out of our field of perception.
This is where Seth brings in that really beautiful, accessible analogy. He turns this abstract idea of energy flow into something you can actually visualize.
He does.
He calls this driving force the cosmic wind.
It's a fantastic metaphor for energy mechanics. It really helps. He suggests we think of this energy not as a static part of the object,
Right.
but as a cosmic wind that fills up from the inside these predetermined non-physical patterns.
So the patterns are like blueprints.
Exactly. The patterns are the architectural blueprints, and the wind is the raw material that makes them temporarily physical.
So the permanence of my desk isn't because the wood particles have, endured for a decade.
No.
It's because the pattern of the desk has been consistently and instantly refilled by this cosmic wind for a decade. It's an act of constant, sustained focus.
That's the critical distinction, but Seth adds an essential detail here.
Okay.
He says the wind that composes the objects is never the same. It comes and goes, filling the patterns according to its own intensity.
Never the same. That implies the energy source is dynamic, it's pulsating, maybe even variable.
Yes, and that could be what accounts for why objects do eventually appear to decay or change. The refilling process might just occasionally be less intense, which leads to a slight deviation from the previous instant's creation.
Okay, so if the universe is constantly refilling its contents with new energy, this instantaneous creation, how does that impact our basic concept of time? Because if continuity is an illusion, the entire idea of linear causality seems to just implode.
It absolutely does. Seth argues that since matter is constantly being recreated instantaneously, the common assumption that matter changes in time is fundamentally distorted.
Right.
We are taught that time is the river and all the objects are just swimming and changing within it.
Exactly. We assume that if we watch a mountain range erode over 10,000 years, that the passage of that measurable time caused the erosion. That's the traditional cause and effect theory we use to, measure reality.
And Seth flat out labels that the false cause and effect theory.
Cool.
We use the seeming change in a material object to judge or measure time intervals. We say, oh, the apple rotted in 3 weeks. And we judge the passage of time by that observable change.
But if the apple from instant 1 vanished completely,
Right.
and the slightly more decayed apple from instant 2 was instantly created by the subconscious mind,
Then time didn't cause the decay.
the instantaneous replacement simply defined the next moment.
You got it. So instead of A causing B over time T, it's more like A simply vanishes and B is instantly created, and we measure the gap between A and B, and we just call that time T.
It's an inverse relationship.
Exactly. And the conclusion just reframes everything. He says, time does not cause change in matter, appearances to the contrary. This is an intellectual earthquake.
It really is. It means the characteristics of the matter define the moment, rather than the moment defining the matter.
It shifts the primary reality from an external continuous flow, which we call time, to an internal instantaneous generation, which is matter.
It also raises a fascinating point about physical constants, like, say, gravity.
Go on.
If my desk disappears for a nanosecond, does gravity also disappear for that nanosecond? If matter is discontinuous, gravity must be too.
That's a great point.
It suggests that every fundamental force we measure is also just an instantaneous manifestation tied to that specific pattern's refilling.
The level of synchronicity required across the entire universe just to maintain the illusion of continuity, it's mind-boggling.
It really is.
It speaks to the processing power required by the underlying reality. The whole system has to be perfectly coordinated, instant by instant, to prevent a global cosmic flicker.
And the entity or entities performing this impossible feat of coordination.
Well, that's what we explore next.
So we've established the how. Matter is instantaneous. It's driven by energy filling these patterns. Now for the who.
Yes, the big question. If external physical forces aren't causing the change, and if everything is a spontaneous creation, who is the cosmic designer?
This is where we shift pretty sharply from, theoretical physics into some radical metaphysics.
It is.
The assertion is man himself and all conscious beings produce matter subconsciously.
It's a jaw-dropper. It
Right.
really is. This isn't just theory. This is positioning the deepest, least understood part of ourselves, the subconscious, as the primary engine of physical manifestation.
The factory
The factory floor where the patterns are housed and released to be filled by that cosmic wind.
And I think we have to just pause here and appreciate the weight and honestly the humor of this claim.
Yeah.
If you, the listener, look around and see a world that's rife with imperfection, stubborn obstacles, painful diseases, just general resistance, you know exactly who the architect is.
Right.
It's your own incredibly powerful yet sometimes baffling resistant subconscious mind generating it moment by moment.
It's the ultimate personal responsibility. We are not passive spectators watching a movie produced by some distant god.
No.
We are the writers, the directors, the projectionists, and the audience, all at the same time, all participating in the instantaneous generation of the next moment of physical reality.
So let's dig into the mechanics of this creation. The arrival and the departure, the creation and replacement are instantaneous acts. How does this link our inner reality to what we perceive externally?
The link is the pattern. The conscious mind might perceive the world and react to it, but the subconscious is this vast, hidden database of patterns, beliefs, expectations, intentions.
Okay.
This analysis basically suggests that the external physical reality we perceive is a direct manifestation or an instantaneous translation of our inner subconscious reality.
So the subconscious holds the pattern.
It holds the pattern, and then it provides the focusing mechanism that draws in the cosmic wind of energy, filling that pattern into a temporary physical manifestation.
But this immediately brings up the skepticism that a deep dive like this requires.
Of course.
If we're the architects, why is the physical plane so resistant to quick, desirable change? Why can't I just manifest a cure for a major disease or instantaneously repair a broken bone if the creation is happening every fraction of a second?
That is the crucial intellectual friction. And the answer seems to lie in the deeply held, often contradictory patterns that exist within the subconscious.
So my conscious desire is just a thin layer on top.
It's a veneer, a thin veneer over these deeply ingrained, resistant subconscious beliefs. If the subconscious pattern says reality is difficult, change is slow, and illness is real, then every single instantaneous creation will reflect that pattern.
So it's not a lack of power.
Not at all. It's a lack of pattern coherence. You have to somehow outpace, or rather reprogram, the deep patterns that are generating the physical world you see.
That suggests the true difficulty isn't changing the world, it's changing the blueprint. The subconscious is an incredibly powerful engine, but it runs on these established historical patterns.
Right.
If it's so quick to generate the present, what are the theoretical limits of this power, especially when it comes to history?
And this is where Seth offers the truly profound implication. Because the creation and replacement of matter are instantaneous, he makes this astonishing leap. That it becomes theoretically possible to recreate the material of the past.
Recreate the material. Hang on, this isn't just like changing a memory.
No.
This is generating the exact physical components, the desk, the keys, the apple that existed at an earlier point in time and manifesting them now.
Yes. That is localized reality manipulation on a profound scale.
It implies that the patterns of the past are never actually destroyed.
They're just archived. If the creation of matter is just the instantaneous filling of a pattern, and you can somehow access the pattern for your keys from last Thursday,
You should be able to instantly manifest those keys, even if they were physically lost in the meantime.
that's the theory.
But there is the necessary, and what Seth himself calls extremely important, caveat.
The big asterisk, yes.
This possibility is strictly limited. It's only possible insofar as the patterns for the material have been retained.
This caveat is the linchpin. We really need to spend some time on this. What are these retained patterns, and where are they held?
Good question.
If the physical brain dies, the material blueprint of the self should be lost. But Seth is implying these blueprints, these patterns, are non-physical.
So they have to be retained in some form of non-physical database.
Right. Whether that is the soul's permanent record, or the collective consciousness, or some kind of universal energy archive.
Philosophically, this changes history from a fixed, irreversible record into a potentially fluid library of blueprints.
A library, yes.
The past isn't gone, it's just the absence of the pattern being actively focused into the present moment.
Exactly. If the subconscious has the ability to recall and manifest any retained pattern, it means the very texture of history, while difficult to manipulate, is not permanently fixed.
And that raises the question, who retains the patterns? Is it just my individual subconscious retaining the patterns of my own environment?
Or is there a vast collective pattern reservoir that contains the blueprints for, say, ancient Rome or a dinosaur?
Right.
Seth's material does imply a kind of hierarchy where individual focus creates personal reality, but a collective focus maintains global realities.
So the key to manipulating perceived history rests entirely on pattern retention and focused collective subconscious energy.
It seems so. The true work isn't physical labor. It's archaeological work, digging into the subconscious to find the blueprints you want to manifest in the next instantaneous moment.
Wow.
Now we move to arguably the most chilling concept of the entire session.
Yep.
The fact that reality is not just constantly being created, but that it blinks out of existence with equal frequency. This is what explains the stability we experience despite the rapid replacement.
So we're moving from the architects to the frequency, the actual pulse of the universe. Why does matter appear so rigid despite this constant spontaneous replacement?
Because the creation is so rapid that our senses are, well, functionally obsolete.
Obsolete, I like that.
Seth states that the illusion of rigidity is due to our outer senses, a perception which is too slow to catch the constant pulsations.
So our biological equipment is calibrated for survival in what seems like a continuous environment. It just filters out any data that suggests instability.
Our eyes and brains are essentially the most sophisticated editing software you can imagine.
Yeah.
They're designed to impose stability onto a chaotic, blinking reality. If the on-off cycle of matter happens faster than our neurological processing time, we just experience persistence.
And that brings us to the core concept of this session, the negative intervals.
The negative intervals. If the world exists in these distinct, separate pulsations, the negative interval is the non-existent gap, the moment the material world does not exist, between one pulsation vanishing from our plane and the next one taking its place.
So it's the split-second pause where matter is neither here nor there, the moment of cosmic nothingness constantly recurring.
And the quote here is just staggering because of the symmetry Seth presents.
What does he say?
There are as many intervals when your material world does not exist as there are intervals in which it does exist.
As many, so it's 50-50.
The symmetry is everything. This is a 50-50 existence. Our known physical positive matter reality exists half the time, and a void exists the other half.
It's like an electrical current of reality that's constantly being broken and reformed at phenomenal speed.
Right. If this were a video game, the frame rate would be so low that we'd constantly notice the lag. But because our perception is lagging even more, we see a smooth reality.
So if these gaps are individually negligible, fractions of a second, what happens to the accumulated nothingness? What's the scale of this non-existence?
Though negligible in isolation, Seth insists that, taken en masse, this adds up until there is as much negative matter as there is positive matter.
As much negative as positive. That implies a profound, simultaneous duality.
It does. For every observable structure composed of positive matter, there's an equally vast, unobservable structure made of something else entirely negative matter, existing in the gaps we don't perceive.
Okay, we need to clarify the terminology here because antimatter and negative matter are conventional physics terms.
They are.
And they mean something very specific, usually involving charge and annihilation. How is Seth's usage different?
Seth is using these terms to describe an energetic state and a location, not just a charge reversal. Our perceived physical matter is what he calls positive matter.
Got it.
The energy or substance that exists during the non-physical negative interval is what he calls negative matter. He does note that we could use the conventional term antimatter.
But for Seth?
For Seth, this negative matter is defined by its non-physical presence in our immediate space-time rather than purely by its particle characteristics.
And crucially, this negative matter doesn't exist after or before our universe.
No, it exists simultaneously with it.
Simultaneously.
Exactly. It operates in a completely different set of physical laws. Seth explains that this negative matter has what he calls anti-gravity, and it exists in its own dimension of anti-space.
So this anti-space is interpenetrating our space.
Coexisting with our space, yes. It's taking up the time intervals when our matter is momentarily gone.
It's the ultimate invisible parallel reality, constantly occupying the spaces where our reality momentarily ceases. So the reason we don't instantly crash into this other 50% of the universe is what?
It's critical. Seth promises to explain the seeming, and for practical purposes, repulsion of so-called positive and negative matter in a later session.
Cliffhanger.
A bit of one. But he clearly establishes that while they occupy the same space, they exist in opposite intervals, so they never interact in a way our senses can register. The constant, instantaneous disappearance and reappearance of matter is what prevents the collision.
So as soon as positive matter returns, negative matter is displaced.
It's displaced into its corresponding interval and vice versa. It's a perfect, high-speed, energetic ballet.
This brings the whole discussion back to the learner's subjective experience. How is the difference between positive and negative matter defined, if not by location?
It all comes down to the observer. The crucial filter is perception. Seth says, perception is the criteria for what you call matter. We label something as matter if our slow physical senses can register it. Our senses are simply not tuned to perceive the continuous instantaneous creation, nor are they tuned to register the negative interval occupied by antimatter.
So the universe is full all the time, but we are only conscious of 50% of its contents.
That's the idea.
It makes you wonder what kind of information exists in that other 50%. Is this negative interval where ideas, pre-physical patterns, and maybe even intentions exist before they're focused into positive matter?
It certainly suggests that. It suggests that perceived physical reality is merely the tip of the iceberg, the brief on flash in a universe that is fundamentally defined by rapid, silent pulsations.
It forces a reevaluation of what emptiness even means.
It does. If we look at the empty space between two objects, Seth suggests that space isn't truly empty. It's likely filled with negative matter, just waiting for the instantaneous shift into the positive interval. It's only empty to our physical senses.
Before Seth wraps up this intense session, he briefly expands the context, doesn't he? He touches on the broader structure of reality, indicating the universe extends far beyond just this flickering 50-50 physical plane.
He does. He describes reality as multi-layered. The physical plane, the one we are instantly creating and perceiving, is merely the focal point for matter manipulation.
The focal point.
It's the highest density, most concentrated area where the energy patterns are translated into physical form.
And what about the surrounding structure? He mentions two other planes are closely interwoven with the physical.
Yes, and they form the outer rim.
The outer rims.
This is a major structural hint. If the physical plane is the focal point, the outer rims must be the regions where the blueprints are stored or refined or activated. It suggests a hierarchy of creation.
How so?
Perhaps the two outer rims are responsible for housing the universal collective patterns, and the individual subconscious draws from those to instantaneously focus matter into the physical plane. They are literally the energetic support structure required for the 50-50 pulsation to even occur.
That raises a chilling question then. If the outer rims are non-physical but closely interwoven, are we constantly passing through those planes during the negative interval, even though we don't perceive them?
That is the implication. When we vanish from here, we shift to a state of negative matter in anti-space, which is likely situated within these outer rims. It means we aren't just turning off, we are transitioning to a different, equally valid structure of reality.
I just appreciate the conversational way Seth closes the session, given the magnitude of what he just dropped.
It's very personable.
He sounds genuinely regretful about keeping his promise to be brief. He says, I hope that you are in suspense and that you will be disappointed, even Rupert, when I say that I will close the session. And then, regretfully, most regretfully.
It really shows the high energy and the flow of the transmission. And the final note he adds ties the whole theory directly to potential application. He mentions the possibility of accessing additional energy in the future, even without conscious thought. This reinforces the idea that understanding the dynamics of the cosmic wind allows for greater access to the source energy that creates matter. If you know the mechanism, you can tap the supply.
It's a promise of expanded personal power that depends entirely on shifting that internal subconscious pattern. But what truly grounds this otherwise abstract discussion are the notes taken by Robert, Jane's husband, and the transcriber.
Yes, the post-session notes.
About his attempts at psychological time. This whole session was structured around providing information that was critical to their ongoing experiments.
And these observations are crucial. They offer immediate physical evidence that just engaging with this material, or even just attempting to alter your state of consciousness, can immediately affect how your perceptual filters operate.
Right.
Robert was trying to achieve a state where his time perception was altered.
So let's detail the first result Robert noted, the physical warping of his own body. What did he experience when he hit that desired state of lightness?
The first sensation was a feeling of lightness, which he associated with successfully entering the altered state. But then, for a few moments, his whole body felt somewhat enlarged.
Enlarged how?
He describes it specifically as feeling broad or wide across the hips and hands, even as he was lying down, relaxed. This is a warping of physical self-perception with no external stimuli.
That sounds precisely like his consciousness, or his perception filter, was briefly expanding to include a dimension beyond the physically defined pattern.
Go on.
If the physical body is merely the focal point, maybe the enlargement he felt was the transient awareness of his form, extending into those outer rim planes Seth just mentioned.
Ah, interesting.
He was momentarily experiencing the non-physical blueprint of himself, which is likely larger or more multidimensional than the dense physical manifestation.
That's a powerful interpretation. The physical form felt too small because his consciousness briefly perceived the entirety of the pattern, not just the physical part. It's like momentarily seeing the blueprint laid over the finished house.
Exactly. And the second phenomena, maybe even more chilling, occurred a few days later, on Sunday, June 14.
Right, and he wasn't even trying for the state this time. He was just relaxing.
He saw spontaneous, brief colored woodland scenes flashing before him as though projected.
These were spontaneous, distinct, and highly visual. They flashed through what he described as a milky screen, but they were easily discernible and in color. The key analysis Robert made was that they were not memories.
Not memories.
Even though he had spent that day in the country, the scenes he witnessed, which had no people or sound, were entirely new.
This completely ties back to the theory of instantaneous creation and retained patterns. If reality is constantly being projected from subconscious patterns, and our perception is the criteria for what becomes matter, what happens if that perceptual filter loosens?
If the filter loosens, your consciousness briefly syncs up with other patterns that are being held or manifested by other consciousnesses, or maybe even patterns archived in those outer rims.
So he was seeing other realities.
Instantaneous glimpses of other realities or other possible physical manifestations. They weren't his memories because they didn't belong to his focused physical pattern of that day. He was peeking through the gaps, through the negative intervals, and seeing the patterns of other potential realities being made manifest.
It's proof that there's a constant high-speed flow of non-physical information all around us, and when the usual strict focus of the physical mind is relaxed, we momentarily gain access to it.
Right.
The spontaneous flashing confirms that reality is less of a fixed stage and more of a rapid-fire, multidimensional projection show.
And this immediate observable side effect demonstrates the practical power of the Seth material. It's not just philosophy. It's a manual for how to shift your perceptive awareness and access these other realms that exist simultaneously in anti-space.
So let's bring this full circle for you. We dove into Session 61 and radically restructured reality based on 3 core concepts. First, the physical world is instantaneously created and discontinuous, driven by a cosmic wind of energy.
Right.
Second, our subconscious mind is the architect, holding the patterns that manifest reality from moment to moment.
The factory floor.
And third, reality blinks in and out of existence in negative intervals, filled by antimatter, because our senses are simply too slow to catch the gap.
And the enormous implication here, which is really the necessary takeaway from this deep dive, is that if matter is composed of patterns filled by energy, and those patterns are retained and generated by our internal consciousness, it just fundamentally challenges the idea of external determinism.
It does.
It raises an essential question for you to consider. Are we passive observers watching a continuous unfolding physical reality? Or are we the active, instantaneous designers of our own physical environment, constantly deciding what the next fraction of a second will contain?
If the illusion of change is caused by these successive, slightly altered creations, then the only true resistance is the momentum of our own deeply ingrained, unexamined subconscious blueprints.
Exactly.
The power to alter reality is literally as close as the next instant of time.
And if we look back at that structure Seth mentioned, the physical plane being just the focal point, it opens up one final provocative thought for the listener.
Go for it.
If the physical plane is the place where matter manipulation is focused, and Robert's experience showed his consciousness briefly expanding, what exact kinds of non-physical patterns are housed in the 2 outer rim planes? Are they the source of pure creativity or non-physical knowledge, or maybe potential future realities just waiting to be drawn in by focused consciousness?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Seth material. We credit the Seth material and the publisher New Awareness Network. To learn more and explore these concepts further, visit their website and bookstore, sethcenter.com/AD-sessions. Join us next time for another deep dive.